Good morning, San Francisco. My name's Alex White and I'm Country Analysis Director here at the Economist Intelligence Unit. I'm sorry not to be there in person, but there's a few things that I'd like to talk about with regard to Europe and how we see developments in Europe over the next 5 to 10 years. Now, before I get into the detail, I'm going to talk about quite a few risks to the outlook. It's worth bearing in mind that Europe's still going to be here. The EU will survive, the eurozone will survive, many European countries will experience solid growth. I think we need to be careful not to get too wound up with the doom-mongering that sometimes takes place from pundits. Having said that, here's the top 5 things that we're looking at for the region over the next 5 years. Number 1 is Brexit. The UK will vote on June 23rd this year on whether it wants to leave the EU or not. Now, in our view, the UK will vote to remain. But there's a lot of risk to that perspective, and it's quite a narrow call. If the UK does vote to leave, we're looking at substantial transition costs. Medium long term, steady state costs may not be too significant, but transition costs over the 2, 3, 4 years that the UK negotiates a new trading relationship, pretty substantial. Also, lots of questions for the rest of Europe about how it coheres, how it sticks together in the context where one of its major members is walking out the door. Number 2, from Brexit to Grexit. Now, the EIU is one of the very few organisations that still has Grexit out there as our base case. We think there's a 60% likelihood of Grexit happening in the next 5 years. This is Greece leaving the euro area. Now, much of the picture about Greece has improved since the referendum that we had after the last government came to power. But the picture still remains very difficult. We don't see the programme that's been agreed looking sustainable. We don't see Greece remaining in the euro area. If Greece does leave, new, big, short, sharp shock to the region. We think the region comes together, it coheres, it's a trigger for greater integration, but lots of risks around that. Number 3, the migration crisis, which will play into the Grexit debate, play into the Brexit debate over the course of 2016. Europe has shown that it cannot pull together a coherent response across the region to the crisis of refugees coming from Syria, Africa, the Middle East. Very big problem for the region because it undermines one of the core principles of Europe, the principle of the free movement of labour. We've got countries slapping in borders and boundaries across the region. Big question about how Europe responds and prospers and survives in that environment. Number 4, the issue of Russia and how the region manages its relationship with a recalcitrant Russia that is looking to redefine its relationship with the successor states of the former Soviet Union. So obviously we've seen the crisis in Ukraine. Our view is that that crisis will wind down slowly. It will become a frozen conflict. But there are many more issues under the bonnet there yet to come up. So we've seen the issues in Ukraine. What happens when we get a succession crisis in Kazakhstan, other countries in the former Soviet Union? Another big thing that we're watching. Number 5 is obviously just the state of the eurozone economy in particular. Lots of questions about what can drive growth in the medium long term. 2014, 2015, we saw decent growth on the back of a bunch of factors that may have turned out ultimately to be temporary. So, lots of questions, lots of challenges. The region will survive. Is it going to prosper? How is it going to manage some of those 5 challenges that I've mentioned? Look forward to hearing your views. Thank you.